What a do, YouTube. This is Acid Root. So I'm going to review the third album by Weezer. Basically, this album is called the Green Album, and it came out in the spring of 2001. And this came out 5 years after their second album, Pinkerton, which kind of had a different kind of reception. At first, it seemed like they didn't like it. Apparently, possibly it got better reception later on, but at the time, it wasn't too popular an album or something like that. So this was an album that kind of was a return to form. Now, with Weezer, for me, I reviewed a couple albums by them. I reviewed 2005's Make Believe, and I reviewed 2008's The Red Album, and I like both of those, but I did notice that the Red Album from 2008 didn't really have like the gateway kind of pop punk edge of Make Believe. Songs like Perfect Situation and songs like Perfect Situation and Beverly Hills were just kind of more in like a punk type edge, kind of similar to Blink 182 and Good Charlotte and some of that type of stuff. But they didn't do that on their 2008 album. So I was looking for more kind of punk edge from Weezer, and luckily there is some more. It's on the Green Album from 2001. This is kind of them on like a different kind of variation of some punk type stuff that they also did in 2005. So eventually I will get to Maladroit from 2002, but because that one didn't seem like a punk, at least Wikipedia said that that one wasn't as much of a punk project. So I wanted to get to this one, then we'll get to some more of these. But this is the next Weezer project that I would review. And this is kind of weird how easily this one just kind of swept me off my feet. I wasn't expecting to give this album like a rave score, which it is going to get a pretty rave score. I like this better than I like Make Believe, and I like this pretty much better than I like the Red Album too. I mean, I like the singles off the Red Album, but I felt like it just didn't have enough outgoing kind of cuts. And I liked Make Believe, but it was just kind of patchy, just within the concept of having more hits like Beverly Hills and then like Perfect Situation, some of the singles. But I look at this album, this is just a clean sweep. It just really came through as 10 short songs, doesn't even have 12 on here. This is only their third album. They're only putting out 10 songs. But I'm not in too much of a complaint format just because out of those 10 songs, I wound up liking 8.5, which I would almost say 9. I might just turn because there's one almost song, but I might just turn it into the ninth song and say I like 9 songs out of 10. So that should give you a gauge of what I'm going to score this album, be liking 9/10 of the album. It's just really, I wasn't expecting to do it. This is just a pretty excellent album, and it makes me want to see if there was kind of more punk albums by Weezer and that type of stuff. Not just punk, but just more stuff by them. I'm going to have to check this out. So Rivers Cuomo and this band did a great job on this album. The singles on this album all really kick ass. I wasn't expecting some of the singles that kind of happened, especially Hash Pipe. That was a different kind of vibe. There were some hit singles on this album. One in particular that surprised me was Hash Pipe. Really did like this song, and I liked all the singles. So there just was a good amount of stuff on this particular project that was enjoyable, and it's just a pretty much tour de force of this like. And this album really doesn't feel like it came out in 2001. That's another thing about it. This is before like September 11th and before like post grunge for the most part. I mean, Nickelback was kind of around, and you had folks like Puddle of Mud and some of them, but this is kind of an awkward spot. It just, when you think of May 2001, there's not a ton of like, I wanted to say that also Blink 182 dropped Take Off Your Pants and Jacket around this time, but this was kind of still more, I think folks were still kind of hung up on more of like Smash Mouth and Sugar Ray and a little bit left over Limp Bizkit and some of those type vibes. It just is kind of odd getting like some power pop and pop punk and that type stuff, just because it was just good. It was just a good valve to kind of get, and it was interesting to kind of get it. So it was just kind of a good concept, but it just felt like a quiet time of the year. Just kind of felt like a quiet time of the year, March, April, May, June of 2001 and such. Just kind of an odd time, but I do like the concept behind it. Just learning about some more of these. So I'm gonna go ahead and talk about the singles. So there were three of them. I mean, there was only 10 songs on this album, so it's pretty brief and to the point, but I just would have to say that all of these songs damn near are that good. So I just would have to say, so the first single is Hash Pipe, and this is like a very litty kind of evening commute bop for smoking. This has some charm on it, and it's a solid kind of after day hours kind of bit of a song, and it just has some rock flair about it. I really appreciate this sort of single. It's just an easy kind of song to just listen to in your vehicle and that type of stuff, just winding down after work, just kind of figuring out what you're going to do. Not so much like, it's just kind of a lot more just rampant and kind of egregious kind of recreational kind of feel about it. This is different from the normal pitch that I was expecting from Weezer. This feels like a really kind of buck the system kind of feeling, just because they usually make more power punk. Like when you think of like, there was like some song on like Make Believe that talked about like what drugs do or something like that. I forget what that's called. Yeah, one of the singles from Make Believe, We Are All on Drugs, was kind of more downplaying that concept. So I do like the concept of at least hearing a pretty clever and slick song like Hash Pipe. This just has a great riff on here, great edgy kind of feeling towards it. Just a great song to kind of kick back and enjoy some times. Just as far as like a good warm weather, kind of August, September, is good July, August, September type feel as far as just kind of kicking back and just kind of having some good summer times as far as that kind of goes. It's an easy one. This is probably one of the more litty kind of Weezer songs that I can think of. Like I like this song more than I like Beverly Hills, which is pretty much one of probably a top five Weezer song for me. I would say Beverly Hills, but this one outdoes that one. So it's just interesting kind of get into some of these. This did chart pretty high too. It hit like #2 on the rock chart, so I wasn't expecting this to sheer success, but it is a great song. The second single is Island in the Sun, and this is another highlight. This is kind of like a mellow, kind of breezy vacation kind of song. It's just an easy resort and mojito and volleyball type tune, and this is just an easy kind of bop for just kicking back in a beach chair and some of those type vibes. This really has like a breezy kind of way more relaxed. Like if Hash Pipe is a lot more alert and kind of getting ready to get crunk, that type of stuff, stepping out to like a shindig. Island in the Sun is just more basking in the sun and kind of kicking back, sunglasses on, suntan lotion on, some of that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. Just an easy kind of highlight. Really perfect for just, summer vacation, June, July. I mean, obviously it should be that simple of a song. This is kind of pretty no-brainer about that situation, but it just is an easy kind of highlighted one. It's a great little breezy kind of song. It's just another highlight for Weezer, I would have to say. And this is another one that pretty much, in my opinion, actually outdoes some stuff that they did on Make Believe. So despite the fact that Make Believe was kind of the album I started with by Weezer, I'd say there's two songs on this album that outdo a lot of the singles off that album. I mean, apart from Beverly Hills, I'd say that these are two pretty much damn near top 5 or top 10 singles from Weezer for me. So I'm starting to bulk up that catalog as far as that kind of goes. Really thoroughly enjoyed Hash Pipe, really thoroughly enjoyed Island in the Sun. And I would say this the almost song on here is Photograph. This is one I'm kind of on the fence about, but I think I might ultimately kind of say it's more of like a song I do enjoy. Photograph is like some lazy kind of midday commute kind of malaise. This really feels like a Green Day song, reminds me in a lot of ways. And it's just kind of for like a regular warm day. It's another one that's kind of similar to Hash Pipe. This would be a better follow up to Hash Pipe, but it just doesn't have as much kind of recreational kind of party fare about it. It's just kind of one for just like a typical kind of day, just after work, that type of stuff, and just getting in your car and feeling good and just kind of having responsibilities done or just mailing some bills, that type of stuff, just getting things taken care of and just moving on with the rest of the day. I kind of look at that concept as just such a relax. There's a lot of songs on here that are very relaxed, lazy, and just makeshift malaise in a lot of ways. I feel like a lot of this, like this is a pretty makeshift album. I feel like there's a lot of blue collar and just job life kind of tunes. Like Hash Pipe is pretty much the exception. Despite how much I like that song, there's not a ton of songs like that on here. But I kind of look after it. There's a lot of this kind of bleary, kind of dreary. There's a lot of kind of bleary, kind of dreary malaise about the makeshift, just in terms of some of those concepts, just kind of lazy kind of riffs, lazy kind of atmosphere about it, just kind of vocals that just kind of are just kind of hazy and that type of stuff as far as that kind of goes. I mean, it is kind of punk, but it also just kind of feels like a lazier version of Green Day in a lot of ways, and not quite as peppy as Blink 182 either. I would have to say those are some similar ones that they are too, but they kind of have different valves as far as that kind of goes. But it is kind of in the same vein as Blink 182 and Green Day, I would have to say. But that's kind of the concept. But it's an almost song just because the riffs are good, but I feel like it's really kind of just through the motions kind of song. It just doesn't quite have as much edge. But then as I listen to the rest of the album, that's kind of why I feel like it may not be an almost song, just because a lot of the riffs on this album are kind of similar to Photographs. So it's just kind of, we'll get to that as we dissect the rest of the album. But so yeah, there's 10 songs on this album, and out of those 10 songs, the only song I don't recommend to you is just Crab, which I just couldn't get into like the song makeup of how that one turned out. It just kind of had like an awkward kind of chorus and just was not as catchy. I mean, it just kind of was a weird topic talking about crab, something like that, just the way that they kind of said it on the song. It just was kind of one that just didn't roll off the tongue as much and was not quite as affable as I would have liked. I mean, considering that they do power pop, I would have expected more songs just with that sort of composure, like Hash Pipe, Island in the Sun, Photograph, songs like Smile, Don't Let Go. But this was just kind of an oddball one, but it's really not much to say, because I'll go ahead and say this album's going to get a 10 out of 10, but I just look after that was like the only real song that just didn't have like just a kind of simple and just kind of affable, this kind of infectiousness that the rest of the album just really went on to have. So this is kind of the thing. But I feel like a song that really reminds me of Blink 182 on here is Knockdown Drag Out. This one just has a real relaxed kind of riff on here. It's just kind of like a punk kind of bubbler. It's just a relaxed version of All the Small Things by Blink 182. Just a similar kind of vibe to that. Just kind of has that kind of punk like chorus and riff guitars and how that those songs are kind of formatted. Just typical kind of punk rock kind of tune. I definitely like it. It's just a lot lazier. It's kind of one like that. Another highlight would be Don't Let Go. Another song similar to Blink 182 is Don't Let Go. This one's not quite as similar to it as Knockdown Drag Out, but it does have some similarities. It's a lazy kind of makeshift rock heater. It's just a simmering ladies song, and it's a nice bop. So there are some good ladies songs on here. Do you like the concept of getting a number of these? It does have a pretty active social life as far as that kind of goes. It's kind of out and about. These are just kind of after hours. They really just remind me of like 4 o'clock, 5:30, 6:30 type PM type stuff, where it's not quite in the midst of like the shindig and that type of stuff. Maybe like Hash Pipe is one of the few ones, but most of these are just kind of after hours, just kind of winding down, or just kind of lazy kind of social interactions type feels, where it's just going to be kind of either hanging out in the car or just kind of going to the park, something like that. Just those kind of typical kind of fanfares, just lazy kind of makeshift kind of days, just very typical kind of sounding, but this is kind of a more relaxed version. This is kind of a more relaxed version of the stuff that Blink 182 was doing in 1999. So this is kind of the thing about it. Very similar to Enema of the State. That's another one. So Glorious Day. Glorious Day is a nice one. I really like the peppiness of this song. It's kind of like a motivational type tune. It's just got some peppy day haze about it. It has some dreary riffs on here, but it has a lot of motivation in its veins. I feel like this is just a good one. It's probably one of the few songs that this kind of, I mean, you could listen to this song 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning as you're getting ready to step out. This is just one that has some jive towards it and a little bit more, or where I said that most of the songs on this album are kind of more lazy and just after hours malaise, that type of stuff. This is one that kind of has some pep about getting some stuff done and having some motivation and just being more alert and that type of stuff as far as going through the day and getting goals accomplished as far as that kind of goes. I do like the concept. It's just kind of an energizing tune. I feel like this is a good one, Glorious Day, for that. A couple of similar songs on here would be Smile and Simple Pages. Smile is kind of an evening out and about romance kind of tune, and it's a lazy kind of winding down malaise like bop, and it's just a comfortable bop for that sort of concept. It's just kind of the stuff that Green Day kind of does, just in a more relaxed and riffs toned down a little bit. Like most of the riffs on this album they're not bad, but they're just kind of real relaxed and just kind of lackadaisical in a lot of ways. They just have a lot of just standard makeshift kind of malaise about them. I say that a lot, but this is a very blue collar album, just in a more relaxed sense. And this is kind of the concept that these songs, Simple and Smile and Simple Pages, are kind of similar in the same type feel about it, but they're just both winding down. They're both just winding down kind of tunes. Simple Pages is more kind of evening. Simple Pages is similar to Smile. This is more evening out, kind of winding down malaise. It's a good ladies song, and it's a great pairing with Smile, I would have to say. And then it's got some mellow riffs on here. So Smile and Simple Pages, good 1-2 punch for that sort of bop. Just good kind of evening out, date night kind of music in a more relaxed sense. I mean, it's not really date night where you're going to like something where you're going to exert a lot of energy, like mechanical bull riding or something like that, or like archery or something like that, but just kind of a more concept of just relaxed kind of times as far as that kind of goes. Just kind of the concept of this lazy kind of winding down type music, just getting a beer at a pub, something like that. Those kind of aspects about it, I just would have to say. Oh Girlfriend is kind of a makeshift late day kind of car tune, I would have to say. This is just a great one for just hanging out in the car and just kind of in the makeshift after hours and just kind of more vehicle prone type stuff, or you're just cruising around, going for some night cruises, just random gallivanting, that type of stuff. It's got some romance woes in it, and it's just kind of a peppy, kind of blue collar sleaze type song, I would have to say. It's one of those songs that you hear out of typical rock bands throughout the 2000s, just with that kind of malaise and just kind of being in the vehicle 5:30 p.m., 6:30 p.m. type stuff. It's kind of where it's not so much like a party tune or a stepping out, getting drunk kind of tune, but it does kind of have the concept of just cruising around and just kind of being rampant a little bit and just cruising. I just would have to say some of that type stuff. So yeah, that's kind of the concept about this album. I want to say I talked about Don't Let Go. I feel like I did. So the thing about this album is there's some bops on here, but minus like Hash Pipe, there's not really any true go crazy kind of take off your shirt, get crunk type tunes in terms of just like a ravenous kind of time. There's minus Hash Pipe, this album is kind of sans like recreational, kind of stepping out and getting crunk kind of tunes where you take your shirt off and just have a great time at like a shindig party, that type of stuff. But I would have to say songs like Smile, Simple Pages, Oh Girlfriend, Knock Down, Drag Out, Don't Let Go, and even Photograph just have a lot of just typical kind of blue collar malaise for winding down in the evening. It's like a lazy kind of date night and that type of stuff, or date evening, just relax, kind of getting wings and having a couple beers, just some of that more relaxed format. And it's just kind of, I do like the concept about it. I'm talking like I'm not going to give this album. This album gets a 10. That's kind of the concept about it. One of the few complaints I have is just the fact that it probably could have used another single like Hash Pipe. I just like the alarming and just kind of random, abstract kind of feeling of that song. It was just kind of an out of character vibe for Weezer that I definitely think that they could do more often. But then that kind of happened with Pork and Beans too. That was another song that was kind of outlandish for them at the time. It was just kind of a random one that had a lot of spark and energy. And it has this punk edge. I will say that songs like Don't Let Go, Simple Pages, Smile, Glorious Day, Knockdown, Drag Out, some of those type ones do have like punk edge. So if you're looking for more kind of emo like punk type Weezer, very similar to stuff that they did on Make Believe, this is a more oriented version, but you have to keep in mind that it's power pop. So it does all of these songs on here try to reach for the charts and have like a power pop kind of chorus. So it's not really as much alternative emo as it is commercial emo. That's just kind of the thing I look after it. It's more of a commercial project and it is very blue collar. This is pretty SFW, I would have to say, minus Hash Pipe. It's just got some good recreational kind of fare in here. So it covers a lot of bases, I would have to say. The social score out of 10, I will give the social score like a 9. I'll give the social score a 9 because I like the singles. I feel like Island in the Sun is a great vacation song. Photograph is a great lazy day kind of song, and Hash Pipe's a great party song. But I just kind of look after it that a lot of these are just kind of lazy day kind of feelings about it, and that's kind of the main theme. I mean, it's not enough to say this project is bad. I'm not going to rip the score about it, but I just have to say that it's not very riveting, and it's not like a wholesome kind of victory in terms of like a weekend album. I think there's enough songs on here to be able to have just in terms of like a compact kind of date evening or something like that, but there needed to be more songs like Hash Pipe. This album's kind of compact. Not sure why their third album only had 10 songs on it. I don't know why they didn't put 12 songs on here, but maybe it was out of the ordinary for another song like Hash Pipe, but they probably could have used at least another song for going to a pub and getting some beers and that type of stuff. But it's just kind of, it assumes that you're going to do that stuff, but it just kind of has a more relaxed fare about it. But yeah, 10 out of 10, 9 social. In terms of the future, like Weezer has dropped like seasons. The last thing I remember by Weezer was they dropped like seasons, EPs, like winter, spring, summer, fall, and that type of stuff that they did in 2022. So I don't know what they're going to be up to after that, but they have dropped some projects across the past good while. They're pretty consistent, but I think this is a pretty excellent album. I was not expecting to give this project a 10, so I should tell you something.